going on, everybody? Welcome back for another episode of Real Talks podcast for entrepreneurs, business owners, and everybody else who wants to get into this space. And I had a great opportunity to meet this amazing lady and woman at the recent 10x Stages workshop that I attended. I automatically gravitated towards her, and if you could see in the video, you won't see it if you're listening and on Spotify or Apple, but on that video version of this podcast, you can see she's wearing free hugs, and it definitely caught my eye. And immediately I told Angel, I said, "Hey, Angel, I'll give you a hug, free hugs." And yeah, she's a great spirit. But I'll let her explain her history, what she's doing to help others, and her experiences in the past that I'm sure is gonna touch her heart and everything as it's touched mine. But here she is, Miss Angel Prater. I appreciate you joining me here on Real Talks podcast. But for our viewers and listeners who don't know who you are, could you please introduce yourself to everybody?
Absolutely. First, I'd just like to say thanks, Jay. I absolutely fell in love with you the moment I felt your energy, and
Oh,
you're like, give me a hug. I'm like, absolutely, you're my kind of people. So, and thanks for inviting me to be here.
of course.
Um, so, who am I? I'm a mother. I'm a mother of two beautiful adult daughters, seven grandbabies. I have been working in traditional behavioral health and social services for 28 years. And a little bit about what drew me to this kind of work is being someone who I was a latchkey kid, and my mom was an amazing hard worker, raising four kids by herself. And being a latchkey kid, you just kind of really don't have a lot of structure and
Hmm.
guidance and that sort of thing. So I started using drugs at a very young age, and was, learned the life of the streets pretty young,
Mm.
and left home at 16 years old, and lived from park benches to penthouses. And
Wow.
I'd say probably, well, not probably, on July 5th of 96, I was walking out of a drug dealer's house. I was 24 years old,
Mm.
and I was just really, really done. I didn't know how to stay in one place. I didn't know how to heal whatever it was that I felt was broken within me. And I was a single mom. My husband at the time actually was in the military and had abandoned me. And so here, my daughter and I were roaming around, and I had lived in 9 states and countless cities. And I
Mm.
didn't know how to stay anywhere longer than 6 months. And I was just
Wow.
broken. I was heartbroken. I was sad. I was scared. I knew how to live the streets, and I knew how to survive. What I didn't know was how to stay in one place. And the only thing that really mattered to me was she was getting ready to start kindergarten.
Mm.
And uh, I walked out of the drug dealer's house. I did a lot of drugs. She never saw me use, but I really now know that I use those drugs to survive. They were a survival mechanism for me.
Yeah.
And I walked out and fell to my knees, and shame was just rolling down my face. I was just sobbing, and I said, okay, God, if you're effing real, get me out of life I'm into. And if you do, I promise I'll dedicate the rest of my life to helping others. And
Yeah.
I've been doing that ever since. I had an eighth grade
Wow.
education. I was a exotic dancer to help us survive. And how do you leave this life, right?
Right.
How do you change? How I didn't know how to do any of that, but I trusted. And a few days later, I left San Francisco. I was in San Francisco at the time, and I ended up in Oregon, back in Oregon actually. My daughter was born there, and I had left there and ended up in a treatment center for women with children, 6 months residential, not because I felt like I had a drug problem, but because I had a moving problem, a shame
Mm.
problem. And so that was the hardest thing that I ever did in my life, but it was the key component, because there I really learned about trauma and having a lot of trauma. I didn't know that I had trauma. I thought I was just
Right.
broken.
Yeah.
So that became the catalyst to driving me to teaching on trauma informed care.
I see.
Um, so I began just a journey. I became an AmeriCorps member for 3 years and giving back, and ended up sitting on an affordable housing board for 13 years. And just because I had the right trauma aware people in my life
Yeah.
that I trusted. And so that's where I'm at. So I basically learned how, as an AmeriCorps member, I learned how to develop programs. And at that time, I could barely read or write. I had an eighth grade education, but they gave me an opportunity because I had a PhD of the streets. I
Wow.
knew the streets. I knew how to connect with others that were struggling,
Yeah.
and I was just honest and vulnerable about it, and kept it real, and so I learned everything else that I needed to learn in work by trial and error. So I firmly believe I was guided, divinely guided, to every role that I've had. So I started developing programs for people living houseless on the streets to
Nice.
unify families, getting them into permanent housing or temporary housing in order to get out of survival brain so that they can actually start to thrive in life.
Yeah.
And then started working in behavioral health with the children's system, and saw how broken that system it really is. And then crisis services. So, I mean, you name it, I've been there. I've worked alongside psychiatrists, and I've worked alongside law enforcement, and I've worked alongside people who are coming off the streets. So I've
Wow.
learned to really take my gifts and what, I choose to call God given gifts and my superpowers, to bridge the gap. With
Yeah.
dyslexia, I can see from a macro perspective, I can see gaps in system. And then from a meso perspective, I can see how to support individuals working within these systems. And then from a micro perspective, I can look at what is working in our current system of care or social services, and what isn't working, and how to educate people on the front lines on how to really connect in a
Mm.
real, raw, and refreshing way. So,
Wow.
so now I
Gotcha.
just teach on trauma. I've been doing that for about 17, 18 years, and I love
Amazing.
what I do.
No, yeah, definitely. I think what you do is actually very important. But before I we dig deeper and ask you a few other questions, because like myself, I'm not very knowledgeable about, trauma, how it can get started and everything else in between. But before I do say, ask questions about that, Angel, I will tell you, I want to give you kudos for being able to survive what previously went through, the experiences that you have, Angel, because this is kind of near and dear. It is not kind of, it is a near and dear in my heart whenever I see somebody, ladies, young, women who are in that situation that you were. I watch, episodes, podcasts about it, or just interviews, and it just, feel really bad. And there's reasons why, women get into situations like that. And for you to be able to overcome all of that, single motherhood at a young age, being lost and trying to raise a daughter on your own, and having to go through addiction, trauma, being in that industry that you were in, is super tough. I see, I've heard people that just get stuck and ruin their life and everything else. And I feel like, oh, it's so hard. It's easier said than done to get out of it, but I'm pretty sure it's difficult. Addiction and everything else, right? Life happens. But you're able to overcome all of those things and be where you are today, and now giving back to the community, to people. So I just want to super commend you. I respect that so much. And I think we need to have more people like you. And I'm glad that you're here on the podcast to share your story and provide some insight and tips and some education as well. For people like me who's not very aware. Um, kind of leads to my next question, Angel. So, obviously your experiences and everything else, but what truly led you to the position in the role that you're in now, and what you're trying to build?
Yeah, that's a great question. So basically, what led me there, I hope you can't hear, but there's a ice cream man driving by right now, which is a fun thing in Arizona.
Yeah, it's good.
Um, so what led me to this, again, really divinely guided, because I have what they call disabilities, right? Invisible disabilities.
Hmm.
I don't use that language. I am
Right.
somebody who sees the world very differently
Yeah.
than a neurotypical individual who learns, very linear.
Hmm.
I'm very all over the place. I have dyslexia, as I said, so I could barely read and write. I still don't
Wow.
like to read. I read what I feel called to read, or what excites me, or what I
Yeah.
want to learn. And I have ADHD, or I don't like to say that it's a disorder. It's more of a order, or a superpower. These are my superpowers. So as I started, this journey, when I
Hmm.
came out of treatment, I realized, 6 months residential was, we're talking back in 1996,
Yeah.
right? It was nearly unheard of to have a treatment center where the therapist that you're with 6 days a week
Hmm.
um, actually understood trauma. And this beautiful woman was from Eastern India, and she brought a whole different perspective, not just the Western medicine,
Yeah.
dominant culture perspective, but a whole nother perspective. And she knew trauma. And I didn't know this back then, but I am one of the very fortunate ones that was able to very early on look at um, what led me to creating decisions, what were my beliefs, values, and behaviors, and how they were, my experiences in my life actually shaped how I saw the world
Hmm.
through a trauma lens. And if you think about trauma informed care, that stems back from the Vietnam War with PTSD with veterans. And then you fast forward to the early 2000s, when trauma informed care actually started opening up to others outside of veterans, really looking at it through the lens of people, right? Into general population, children, etc. And then shortly after, SAMHSA, Substance Abuse Mental Health Services Administration, formulated a list of guiding principles to actually provide trauma informed care practices. Here's the catch, though. What led me here is being able to heal a lot of trauma, right? And really work in the system in various different roles while working through this trauma experience. And then I started teaching on it. Well, what I learned very early on was there was a gap. So I have friends that are in all roles. I have friends that are psychiatrists, law enforcement, teachers, social workers, etc., that are burnt out. They are exhausted. The vicarious trauma that they receive, the burnout that they get, the compassion fatigue. And I started thinking about it, and I thought, wait a minute, they need healing too. But the way the macro system teaches them to think outward, how are they going to practice trauma informed care if they don't know how to respond? So, what happens is individuals who have well intentions, and they get all this information about what trauma informed care is, it's the what it is and why it's important. It's the information, it's the head information. What our system is lacking is the internal process for the external practice. So it's missing the how to incorporate or do the practice that they've given you, or the information they've given you. And I've heard this for decades, people say, why haven't we all learned this from the get go on how to do these things? So basically, our system of care has zero continuity across systems because it really depends on who's in charge and what practices they implement within their organization or their company, right? And so there's no continuity, there's no system that keeps everybody on the same page. So everybody's kind of running around like, how the hell do we do this? And as a result, people who work in these systems they're quitting, right? Like in 2019, over 500 doctors died by suicide. And I'll tell you, I believe there's a link to that from the systemic gaps because they don't want to talk about if something's happening inside of them. They're struggling because they can lose their license, right? And so they've either got to leave the country or go get something very confidential. And that's very real for many people in these roles. And then they're taught not to share, right? Self disclose and have reciprocal kind of engagement with people they're serving. And so that's a big broken piece in our system. So I decided that I didn't really decide. About 18 years ago, I had a vision of something that I feel, was placed on my heart that I was supposed to build. I had no idea what that meant. I could see it, but over the years, I now understand that I was supposed to leave nonprofit. I was in nonprofit for 25 years until December of 2020. And I took a leap of faith to start a company and start training the way I believed we needed to have these gaps filled. And without anybody telling me what I can or cannot say or do, and to really bring real systemic change to people who work in the system and people who are receiving services in the system. And so that's what I'm doing now is I'm training on trauma awareness. So trauma informed care is the what it is, why it's important. Trauma awareness is an internal process. There's 4 steps for an external practice so that they actually can recognize their own bias, their own assumptions, their own trauma activations, so they don't react out of fear or discomfort anymore. They're actually learning to respond with hope.
Angel, I don't know what happened. I ended up disappearing. Um, you were on track to do everything good. So I think we're recording again. So it's gonna recycle. And don't worry, it kind of happens when it's live. So I'll have the team to adjust it. But you were saying like you took the leap of faith. I think did you say around December 2020?
Yes, so I took a leap of faith, December 2020, and decided that I was going to leave nonprofit
Mm-hmm.
and build a company that allowed me to create what I felt called that no one could tell me what I could say, how I could train it, how I could
Mm-hmm.
teach it. There was no restrictions. And because when you work in that
Wow.
system of care, there's a lot of people from all levels defining what help looks like for someone.
Right.
And so for me, I realized that that was one of the biggest gaps in our system is that somebody else in power that's never maybe never lived this lifestyle of the people they're serving actually are making the decisions and saying who's or what is helpful
Yeah.
rather than allowing people who are working in the system to come from their heart and people go into this line of work or these lines of work because they're heart driven, but then
Yeah.
they get in there and they get burnt out and they get vicarious trauma because the system limits what they're allowed to offer. And
Okay.
so
Yeah.
that's what I'm doing is helping people recognize trauma informed care is the what it is, why it's important, and trauma awareness is an internal practice, recognizing your own bias, your own assumptions, your own activations, and for an external practice so that you or everyone can start reflecting on their part in the engagement and then allow their heart to drive them. So allow themselves to do what they know is right and walk alongside individuals rather than from a position of power expert.
Yeah. Wow, that's so awesome. I will tell you, kind of like what you said, the doctors. Since what 2019, there's over 500 doctors who committed suicide, taking their lives, which is very unfortunate. But I see why they don't express it. And as you stated, like they're in this position of um, power service, and their job is to help others, right? So as on the legal side of things, they can't really probably openly talk about what's going on with their mental health, the trauma that they have, because they could potentially lose their license to practice. And it's kind of very similar in the US military, or at least from what my own experiences are, is because when you are in position of higher power or higher responsibility, we are supposed to be the role model, the front, and we have to be strong. We have to be courageous, and we shouldn't have any issues, mental health, trauma. None of that exists in our world. And I too experienced that as I went up the ladder and got up to where um, I before retired from the U.S. Navy, I reached the rank of senior chief, which is the second highest rank in the enlisted ranking structure in the military in the U.S. Navy. And I had 250 sailors that were looking, you know, you know, for me to support them and help them out and lead them to success. And I did that, but I also hid all my trauma experiences and anxiety, depression, and whatever disability or superpower I have. Unfortunately, like there's a few things I'm still working on at the moment, but so I definitely see a lot of value in what you're doing. And I do want to ask a follow-on question. So may get some. You gave us some great information about trauma informed care. I'm not sure if you really touched on this already, like because I saw like with what is the difference between informed care, like trauma informed care, compared to Hope's trauma aware approach. Like, did you already explain that? That is that what that is?
Well, not in deep detail, so I can just
Yeah, please.
recap really quick. So individuals, I don't know, something's popped on to my screen, so I didn't want it to be seen. So individuals who are in these roles in our system, law enforcement, teachers, healthcare providers, behavioral health, they are required to learn trauma informed care and
You're
trauma
right.
informed practices, right? That's the information. And Alchemize Hope's trauma aware approach is actually 4 steps to applying what they've learned. And
Okay.
it's pretty amazing when you think about the people who I've trained over the years. And again, I've trained thousands of people. They always would come to me and say, well, nobody's doing it the same. Like,
Right.
I don't understand how to do this, or I
Mm-hmm.
know what to do, but what they don't know is how to filter through a lens of the person that they're serving. So, for example, I go into a doctor's office, I might see a pharmaceutical notepad sitting on the on the desk, and it might have a syringe on it. So they're they might be advertising, say, diabetes medication
Mm-hmm.
on this notepad, but the syringe is not trauma informed, or it's not trauma aware, because that syringe actually, they don't know who's coming in, sitting down, grabbing this and looking at it. It's activation, right? Just like using language could be very activating. um, I don't use the language in the addiction or the substance use field. They use a lot of language like trigger, right? Well, in the military, or somebody who has trauma around, weapons, just the language or the word trigger might actually be activating for someone. So if we're not being mindful about what might be activating to the people that we're serving, including our own personal activations in the language we use or the way we are with people, then we're doing more harm. And if we've signed,
Gotcha.
a code of do no harm, and we're not self-reflecting of when we're being reactive rather than responsive,
Mm-hmm.
then we're doing harm.
Yeah,
So it's
I agree.
the trauma aware approach is an internal process to become aware of your part, to practice responding rather than reacting.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for explaining that thoroughly. I think it's really important to for us, like people like myself, to learn a little bit more about this and so on. And for the people that are listening or watching, if let's say there's somebody that can relate to what we're talking about here in this episode, how can people get a hold of you?
Excuse me. Well, they can go to my website. So it's a-hopeinstitute.com, which stands for Alchemize Hope Institute.
Hmm.
And
So cool.
or they can they can go onto our website and click a link that says contact us, or and I'll have a conversation with people. And
Yeah,
yes, it comes directly to me. I do have a team of people, but for now, I think it's really important to connect with individuals that are interested. We
yeah.
do a variety of things. So.
So
Or
cool.
they
So
can
cool.
reach out
Okay.
to me
Yeah.
on the phone number, which is 503-319-6671, or directly to me, Angel at a-hopeinstitute.com.
Well, I think anybody that's listening and watching this episode and can actually relate to what Angel is talking about, and if you're experiencing this and you need some help or some at least just information, education to better lead your team, or somebody, please. I think Angel is doing some great work, and with her experiences in trauma personally, and her being able to overcome all of these right now, I think could be a huge benefit to you. So please feel free to reach out and not suffer in silence. Um, Next question that I would want to say is, you and I were both at the 10x stages. It costs money to attend, to fly. I know you came from Arizona all the way to going to Miami, getting staying at the hotel and all that stuff, and so on and so forth. But for you, who's got a lot of experience in your industry and in what you do, why do you still attend these kind of like workshops and things like that?
I am a firm believer that if I think that I'm done learning, then there's something happening that's not quite right in there. And I really
Mm,
believe that I want to learn, I want to connect with individuals that know more than me, or have
yeah,
alignment, or have different experiences that I can continue to grow. You know,
yeah,
learning and growing is the key to life, in my opinion.
I
Otherwise, you
agree.
just stay stuck and keep doing the same old thing, different day. And I don't want to claim to be an expert of anything. I want to honor that there's always something more I can learn, and always something new I can do. And so it was a leap of faith. I felt guided. I went there and had an amazing time. I thought the 10x conference, or information that we were learning at that specific one, was amazing. And I actually purchased the 7-step formula sales system from 10x, that I'll be attending a 2-day
So cool.
virtual. I can't really afford to like go to a whole nother trip to Miami in the same month. So
Back
I'll
to
be doing,
back, yeah.
yeah, back to back. It'd be nice, but I take what I
That's
can get.
actually yeah, virtually is it's still gonna be good. We do a lot of webinars and virtual workshops, and as long as you can remain focused, right? It's
Yeah,
different the live, the in
worlds,
person
right?
vice. Yeah. Whereas in the computer, you're staring at the screen. It's a lot more difficult to focus. At least it is for me. But nonetheless, it's still great. that you're able to attend that. And yeah, personal and professional growth should always be something that we're always pushing forward, you know, and because there's always something to learn, and we don't know what we don't know. And
Right.
the fact of the matter is, you being here explaining, you know, trauma, how to deal with it, and identifying symptoms and coping mechanism is very important. There's so many people that, you know, that can learn from this, and so I'm very very honored to have you here. And what is your future goals, you know, with your own business now moving forward? Obviously the goal is to help many others, but like on a business standpoint, like how are you planning on like reaching out to your ideal avatar, your audience?
Yes, thanks for asking. So, coming from nonprofit world, it's a whole different ball game in this, S corp driven kind of business
Mm-hmm.
model.
Right.
So I will be doing any kind of stages, virtual stages, in-person stages. I'm great at public speaking. I've been told that the energy is really something that really gets people excited. I love to use things like this to kind of drive home the message of what I'm verbally conveying to really honor neurodiverse individuals. I haven't used it, but I'm also building an online training institute, and so it'll be self-paced on demand. And I really believe that we need to reach everyone. So I also have this amazing vision. I want to help organizations that do a lot of competing for money, but then the money they're going after, to do all their great work, is really limited and limited to who or what help looks like. And so part of that vision I had was actually a sustainability process to help generate unrestricted revenue for organizations to sustain their programs and their agencies in a way. So if people are interested in learning more about that, please let me know, because I I helped build a program like that in one of the nonprofits that I was running before I left this work. It literally helped create a cushion, if you will, in case contracts go away. So those nonprofit sectors. And then corporations, if you think about staff wellness, I really want to help uh, organizations, companies in leadership that really value the people that they employ to maintain wellness and to help them culturally shift and allow for wellness to be a priority within their company, whether it's a state or, Fortune 500. It doesn't matter. I really believe that trauma is the foundation to conflict, to suicide, to substance use. It is the catalyst that drives all of these languages of pain. And so learning how to look at it through a lens of hope allows organizations to really implement some real world, practical, affordable ways to offer pathways of hope for the people that they employ and their family members. So it's kind of universal. So I'm doing
The great thing about Riverside Podcast, it'll just fix itself. But don't worry. By the time that we go publish this episode, my amazing media team, shout out to Jed Media, who's been working with me for the past 2 years. I appreciate you guys. And yeah, I'm very grateful to have you here. I'm very grateful to connect with you. You know, and then I'm very grateful and honored to move forward and build this professional and personal relationship. I think you will do wonders in the future, and I'm here to support it. And
Thank you. I really, really
of
appreciate
course,
that.
and I guess one last advice to our listeners and our viewers: anything, if it's related to mental health, trauma, or just in general, like mindset, anything that you want to leave us before we end the episode.
Yeah, absolutely. Really quickly. Um, if you could think about suicide and substance use as a language of pain and not something to be pathologized. the Free Hugs Initiative that is global, that I really want to educate individuals that one person every 40 seconds completes
Hmm.
suicide. And it's heartbreaking to think that people stop talking to others because they're afraid of the way, whether it's the professional or the loved one, reacts to what they're saying. Learning to respond rather than react is key to maintaining connection. And so if you can connect with them, learn with them, grow with them, heal with them, that is the key to learning to respond. And we got to, people are dying because our system is
Mm-hmm.
broken. And it doesn't mean that people working in the system don't care. What it means is the people in charge, the macro system, has designed a broken system. And Dr. Gabor Mate said it the best. He said, if you want to design a broken system, you'll design it like the United
Hmm.
States. And that means behavioral health, criminal justice, etc. And so remember, everything that we see happening with an individual, if I
Of
can, just
course,
really
yeah.
quickly, um, everything that we see. So here's the individual. Oh, let me go over here. Here's the
Yep.
individual. We cannot see what's happening inside an individual. What we see is the behavior. This is what the world sees,
Yeah.
right? So if you see them suicide, trying to die by suicide, or angry, or stealing, or using
Mm-hmm.
drugs, or hearing voices, etc., our current system teaches people to react to what they see.
Yep.
We're not going in to learn what's happening inside of them, seeking to understand. So then what happens is when the world reacts to this behavior, we're creating more harm.
Yeah.
And so they're reacting. This is the way we
Right.
react,
Right.
right? So self-reflecting, if I hear someone say that they want to die by suicide, what's my natural reaction to that? I might have fear, or I might problem solve, or I might coerce them to do something, right? Or if they're using
Mm-hmm.
drugs, I might tell them, work the steps or die, MNFer, right? That's what they say in the
Mm-hmm.
12-step program, work the steps or die, MNFer, right? Or I might say, I might be a parent and I might be trying to take control, right? Or lock them up, put them in jail or institution. This is the broken system. So what we need to be doing is using a different way of thinking. This is a reactive
Mm-hmm.
behavior. So we need to create another circle. That other circle allows for us to see the behavior but respond with hope.
Mm.
So responding is acknowledging. It's not to negate that I just felt
Yeah.
afraid. Someone just said they want to die, right? It's to honor fear's present and move through that fear and be honest about it. Like, wow, thank you for trusting me. That's a response
Yeah.
rather than, hey, you might want to talk to your doctor about that. A response is, thank you. You must, it's validating that they just said something really important because they trusted you. Or if they're using drugs, being curious of how it's helpful for them instead of judging them or putting them in some sort of shame, because shame takes a life of its own. How do we honor what they just said and seek to
Gotcha.
understand?
Wow.
So I just put it there.
Yeah.
That's real.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. There's so much more that we need to learn, and I appreciate you putting that in the whiteboard and giving us a little bit of visual. That was so cool. Hey guys, again, this was very beneficial for me personally, and I hope this actually was helpful for you also. And if you found this episode beneficial for you, if you've liked it, please subscribe and follow myself as well as Miss Angel Prater. She's amazing. And Angel, thank you again for being here. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your knowledge. And we'll talk again real soon. Take care, everybody.
Thank
All right.
you.
See ya.